Greetings, race fans, and welcome to Sim Racers Group Formula 4 Racing on SMB. JR Gregory here with you on the call. Beside me in the commentary booth, my longtime partner, Racing Ron Mons, and tonight's producer, the great Joshua Wilkie. Tonight's round 9 of SRG F4 action returns to Australia to the fantastic Mount Panorama here in Bathurst. 85-year history of racing here on Mount Panorama, technically a street circuit. So these are public roads, and there are some homes up here on the mountain only reachable by track. So when that lottery win comes in for me, you can find my address on Skyline Boulevard. Currently 23 turns, 3.8 miles or 6.2 clicks, an elevation change of 174 meters or 571 feet, pretty similar to Laguna Seca over here in the U.S. This track is host to Aussie Supercars, a famous 12-hour endurance race, and many others. And Ron, I hate to throw around cliches, as you well know, but balls to the wall comes to mind here. And to survive Mount Pano, both are going to play a role.
As much as this track is one that really twists your guts with a lot of bends and a lot of elevation change, it's also one that you have to have guts to drive around well. You need to have some pure dedication running these F4 cars around this track. These are basically go-karts with wings. These drivers sliding their way through these corners, balancing the throttle, balancing all the pedals, and just really dancing with the devil around a track like this. JR, you had some experience earlier on in the practice session, so I think you can attest to it rather well, that this combination is challenging but also super rewarding if you get it right.
Man, I'll tell you, it is a fantastic showcase for the strengths of this F4 car. Not a lot of power. I think we've talked about before. It's a four-banger with about 160 horse, but their cars are quite light. Got a lot of rubber under them, as you can see here as we ride along with Mikovits. He's getting to the top of the mountain, approaching Skyline right now. And my goodness, yeah, if you're a GT3 driver like myself, you need to kind of adjust to the massive grip of these cars and learn to trust them. Like that double left-hand combination heading onto Skyline in a GT3 car, particularly I'm a 911 driver, you kind of hold your breath and hope that you're not going to die every lap. But this car, Ron, it is flat, no brakes, no lift. You keep the pedal to the metal. The car does lighten up a little bit right when you get to Skyline. You got to be ready to catch it. But man, oh man, what a fantastic drive around here. And the nimbleness of the F4 car, particularly as you dive down the dipper, another place that kind of makes me clench up a little bit in that 992 GT3 that I normally drive. That front end bites and you make that left-hander at the bottom of the dipper, no problem, at speed, on power in third. So these cars, man, oh man, if you haven't driven one of these, I highly recommend it. And a track like this that kind of allows them to stretch their legs a little bit and show their stuff, absolute joy to drive this F4 car at Mount Panorama.
And when you compare it to some of the other Aussie tracks that we've been at up to this point in this season here for SRG F4 here in Season 2 of 2025, you look at the likes of Sandown, Winton, Phillip Island, all of which came back to back to back. We had Oran Park about 2 weeks ago, which sadly is a track that has gone the way of the Dodo Bird, but here this track is still around. While the most famous of them all, I remember saying this a lot when I had the fantastic privilege of being on the Bathurst 12-hour iRacing show here for this year on the iRacing Esports Network. I remember talking about the fact that this track, despite the fact that it really only hosts 2 races in a given year, it's 2 of the fantastic races in the world. The Bathurst 12-hour for GT3s, and of course the Bathurst 1000 for the V8 Supercar Series. This track may not be one that gets used a whole lot in real life, but when it does, it gets used to absolute perfection. And here in this series, it's the only time we're visiting this track, but I have a feeling we are in for an absolute barn burner of a race here today. Looking through the results from this practice session, rather mixed up with many Inter-Ale and Inter-1 drivers kind of battling tooth and nail. We also have some weather to talk about a little bit later on in this show as well. But JR, we are getting towards the end of this season, so I think we also need to take a consideration for the championship points battles as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And we'll get Josh to spool up those points for you. There are some drops involved, so the points still have some movement here that could happen. But here is your Inter 1. This is the middle of the 3 classes. You see Corwin from Kocher, Wang, De Silva, and Lopez there at the top 5. But all of those guys, at least the top 4, are within striking distance of Corwin. Now, it's going to take some major failures on Corwin's part. Probably not likely. I think he has a pretty good lock on that one. He's been driving very well and driving up amongst the alien folks for several races in a row. So Corwin is definitely in a groove right now and is probably feeling pretty good about that 144 at the top of Inter 1. And here's our Inter 2 class, our most populous class here. In this one, Bujak, you see, completely driving away. That's a 146-point spread separating him and Conway in P2. Then Navas, Molina, Duval, Posada, Grunsky, Cardenas, Van Wagner, Trantham, and Swanbeck, your top 10 there in Inter 2. And we'll scroll that and you'll see how many cars we have. There are a lot of entries there. And we won't scroll that, but take my word for it, there's a few more Inter 2 cars there. And here is your Inter Alien class. And Mike Mikovits right now. Oh, that is, that's not the week, or that's not the season total, Josh. That looks like maybe last week's results. But yeah, we're fighting a little bit of technology here, which kind of inescapable week in and week out. So we have a little problem with the alien points, and we will have that sorted for you next time. But practice now winding down. Looks like that is going to checker here shortly, and then we will have an open qualifying session. And Ron, myself, I say this every week. I really like the open qualifying format. It is true to life. You don't get the track to yourself in qualifying at the real racetrack. Really no good reason why you should get it to yourself here. So there is going to be some strategy involved. And I'll tell you, with such a spread of pace and skills out here, haven't really seen many people do it. But I think if it was me, I would take a breath right now and allow some space to develop before going out, particularly if I was a faster driver. The laps around here are quite long, and I don't think there's really any harm in letting the people that are storming the track you see right now, letting them kind of get up the road a little bit and create some space and get some clear air to get some work done in qualifying.
And, it's a brilliant point that you raise here, JR, talking about the benefits of letting those drivers a little bit farther up the road, get involved in each other's mess, and just say, you know what, I'm going to be here by myself. As all of this chaos is going on and the library is burning down, I'm going to be sitting in the corner that's fireproof and reading a nice book. So I think that's a good strategy, but there is a bit of the yin and the yang that comes with it all as well. You've got the yin of being by yourself and being able to focus on your run, heading through some of the very challenging sections of this racetrack, which after turn number 2, you're basically dealing with turns from there all the way up through turn number 18 of Forest Elbow. So decent chunk of this track, you are having to deal with some turning, dealing with the small little bit of dirty air that comes off of these race cars, and also having to deal with other drivers who may end up spinning, heading through the downhill sections of this track and create a bit of a track blocking situation. But with that yin comes the yang of losing out on the draft, heading down the Mound straightaway and the Conrad straightaway around this racetrack. From my previous experience commentating these F4s, and JR, I'm sure from your experience in the series, you can attest to that as well. These cars definitely have a bit of a strong draft, so there's one thing to gain and another thing to lose, and that's the real game that these drivers are having to think about in their head.
Yeah, you're right, Ron. The draft makes a big difference down that Conrad straight, and looks like we're riding along with Lopez looking back up the hill toward the top of Mount Panorama, coming down that Conrad straight. And I was out here in practice earlier, and with the draft, these F4 cars were redlining in 6th gear, I'm going to say right about here. And without a draft, they never got there. So there is a significant speed differential whether or not you can catch a draft. And of course, the draft giveth and the draft taketh away. There's a presumption there, I think, that your draft partner has similar pace that you do. So if you're an alien and you try to catch a draft off of an inner 2 car, that may not give the benefit that it would otherwise.
Yeah, there's so much that's going to be riding on these drivers' minds in this qualifying session that we have coming up. Still 15 minutes long in its totality, and we haven't even gotten some lap times on the board, and we are already 3 minutes in. So talking about the length of this lap, those drivers in the practice session earlier on were firmly in the 2-minute territory. Alex Velasco was actually our quickest driver in practice, setting a 2:09.143. And Stephen Case was up towards the front there as well. Igor Grunsky was the slowest car in that practice session at 2:17.4. So going to see a bit of a pace disparity here at this very challenging racetrack, and going to see some of the longest laps that we have seen from the entirety of this season as well. So a 15-minute long qualifying session that may seem like you have infinite time at some other tracks that we visited this season, going to feel like it goes by in the blink of an eye here at Bathurst.
Yeah, 100%, Ron, and they are under pressure. You saw how long the outlap took, and still no time's up. We're 4 minutes into qualifying, and we're riding along with somebody right now just beginning their first hot lap. And as you said, some of the shorter tracks, you could have an incident, have a problem, and it wouldn't be that costly. But here, the outlap is so long, tire changes, I think, are going to kind of be out of the question due to that. And you got to just do your best with the hand that is dealt to you. You may get lucky in traffic, you may get unlucky in traffic, but just like at the real track, you got to keep your head down and get the best time that you can. A little more pressure, though, on qualifying. Remember, these races are quite short, only 20 minutes, not super easy to pass here at Mount Panorama. So track position going to be critical here when the green flag drops.
And I do want to take a leaflet out of one of the most anonymous Philadelphia weathermen who I grew up with, Glenn Hurricane Schwartz on NBC 10 Philadelphia here in this city, and talk about the weather situation, which is definitely going to be a factor in this race that we have coming up. Potentially not going to see rain in this qualifying session, considering we only have a tick under 10 minutes left to go, and it's looking like we'll have some rain a little bit later on in the afternoon in sim time. However, we are going to have rain between the end of this qualifying session and the start of the race. So these drivers may have a completely different track to contend with come time for this 20-minute long race that we have coming up. And JR, you know that those races can get hectic. So throw rain into the fold as well around a track like this. That is going to make it even more challenging.
Yeah, too right, Ron. And I'm picturing a ping pong ball right now. And if you are not familiar with our SRG Formula 4 racing, damage is going to be off here. So when you imagine these F4 cars swarming onto a cold, wet track, probably in slicks, if you're picturing carnage, you're probably getting a pretty clear picture of at least what some of the drivers are going to experience. But instead of a race-ending bender into one of these concrete walls, these cars are going to be magically repaired and the cars are going to be underway. So in a situation that might cost us about half the field in the first lap, these cars are going to keep going. The emphasis here on experience and seat time. And so that's why damage is off. They want these drivers to get as much time as possible. It's a pipeline to a higher the next series, which will be F3, and we'll talk about that a little bit more. But Sim Racers Group is going to have an F3 presentation. A lot of these faster drivers are going to be moving up into that to make room for some more folks to learn these open wheel cars in these fantastic F4 races.
But for now, though, in these final 3 weeks of this season, we have got some heavy hitters turning out in full force. Mike Braun, your current provisional pole sitter at a 2:10.0. Gotta say, one thing that we haven't talked about thus far in this qualifying coverage here, JR, is talking about the incident points, because that is a huge factor when it comes to a qualifying session. Pick up any sort of off-track moment around this 23-turn long road course, and you are going to lose out on the opportunity to set a qualifying time. It isn't an unlimited amount of time that these drivers have either, so they need to put their nose to the grindstone and get something to work in this qualifying session. So could be part of the reason why we only have 15 drivers who have set a qualifying time up to this point. Some drivers now getting some times on the board as Alex Velasco in the 777 jumping up to the provisional pole and breaking through that 2:10 barrier. But at the same time, lots of other very competitive drivers, including a decent chunk of our inter-alien racers, yet to set a time.
Yeah, and that is definitely a hazard here at Bathurst. It's not the kind of 1X trap that you would have at a place like Interlagos, but those little wall touches, if you get a little puff of concrete dust that shows up on your screen as a 0X, that is a dirty lap for qualifying purposes for iRacing. So you've got to be very, very precise here and dance that normal dance between how far can I push it, how fast can I go, and the need to keep it clean. Much more important here than during the race. A few little wall bangs, little scuffs here and there are going to be part of racing up here, but during qualifying, absolutely critical, Ron, as you said, to keep it clean. And yeah, the laps are coming in. So far we got Velasco from Poborgi from Oladipo in your Alien class 1, 2, and 7 overall. Mike Braun still hanging on to the provincial pole in Inter 1, followed by Libovi and Snyder. And we got Bujak, Duval, and Conway as your provincial podium so far. Time still coming in there. You see Jason Trantham jump up, and oh boy, and here comes the rain right now. 6 minutes to go. And I'll tell you, this course, being from Portland, I'm having a bit of a flashback here. Bathurst is so big and kind of similar to Portland. These spring squalls will blow through the course, and one part of the course will be bright sun and the other part will be undrivable. And that's kind of what we're getting now. We're getting a little rain over the mountaintop right now. And Ron, we've seen a couple. As you see the spray, great camera work. We're riding along with Poborgi now, looking forward, and you see the spray coming off of those tires. And I think it was at Fuji where we had a race that started getting wet late in the race, or maybe it was, no, I think it was Fuji. But part of the drama was many of the drivers did not change, and it turned out that slicks were still faster than treaded tires with a very lightly wet track. So I doubt that we're going to see anybody dive in here, Ron, for treaded tires, but anything's possible.
And the last time I had the privilege of commentating one of these races here on Slow Motion Broadcasting, which you can catch every single Wednesday at 9:45 p.m. Eastern Time, it was at Oran Park a couple of weeks ago, and we had a rather damp race there, but the track, it was in that spot from hell, as I feel like some of these drivers would probably describe it, where the track was too wet to really run quick on slicks, but also too dry to run competitively on wets. So it was just a real half-half compromise where no one really won out in all of it. But Stephen Case was victorious, and he's currently our quicker driver in this qualifying session, just jumping up to the pole a matter of a few moments ago at a 209.511. We're starting to see these drivers struggle, and we're starting to see the Rooster Tails come off these slick tires. Now, if it were wet tires and you're getting Rooster Tails like that, yeah, okay, fine. What water is getting picked up off a slick, really speaking to how treacherous this track is starting to get, as we followed Greg Meyer giving a slight tap to the forest elbow wall coming out of one of the final turns around this racetrack, turn 18, as he heads down the Conrad straightaway. This part of the track seems rather dry. It's the top end of the track that seems to be the most wet, which is fine and all, except for the fact that the bottom end is where the simple stuff is, and the top end of the track is where you're turning all the time. So, of all the places for the rain to hit, the weather gods really chose the most challenging spot for these drivers.
Yeah, tough stuff, and I'm really feeling for these drivers. I got out here and participated in the practice session for a little bit prior to our broadcast, and just getting some experience in these F4 cars and learning them. And one thing that I figured out, and that most people figure out pretty quick, it takes some time for these tires to get up to temperature. There's not a ton of power and not a ton of weight on these tires, so it probably took 3, 4, 5 laps here to get these tires in their sweet spot during practice. And just as these tires were kind of getting where you wanted it to be, as you see somebody down there take a crazy ride through Hell Corner, just when the tires are getting to the operating temperature you're looking for, it starts drizzling. So probably some cursing in some of these helmets under some of these drivers' breath. We knew that the forecast was going to include some rain, but tough that it comes right when they're getting dialed in qualifying.
And I would say at the present moment in this qualifying session, we've got a good idea as to how the conditions are following Borgi heading down into the chase. You can tell that he is not confident at all with the steering wheel in his race car. Let's see if it is an improvement from him right towards the end of the session. But the point I was going to raise is the fact I think we've hit the point where, as much as there is time left on the clock, I don't think there's time left on the track. The conditions have gotten to the point where iRacing is marking the track as very lightly wet. Now, that may not seem like the worst thing in the world, but again, there's a certain window in these race cars, or really all kinds of race cars, where the slick tires won't work too well because the track is too wet, and the wet tires won't work too well because they're going to overheat in the blink of an eye because the track's too dry. That is where we're at the present moment. I think these drivers are mainly out here just to get some reconnaissance laps. If your driver set a rather slower time as a banker, maybe you can improve, but by and large, you can see at the bottom of your screen all yellow sectors, nothing being improved on by these drivers. So it's looking very good for Stephen Case and Alec Velasquez. We see scraping the wall is Bujak heading his way through Forrest's elbow, not scraping his elbow like Forrest did, scraping the right side of his tire.
Yeah, tough stuff, and lap times definitely dropping. Bujak looking good. He managed to get in a pretty good time of 2:10.6 while the track was still dry, but you see him struggling there, and whoopsie. Yeah, that's a little understeer on entry in these cars is a killer. You got to get him rotating on entry. If you can't, it is over for your exit of that corner. And in these momentum-based cars, that is not the way to go fast. So you saw Paborgi fighting the understeer entering the chase. You saw Bujak there wash out of Forrest's elbow. So you're right, Ron. This qualifying session is effectively over. It's strangely empty, though. The cars are still out there, but really being dealt a tough hand right now.
This is a very bad thing to say, so I apologize in advance. The timing screens They look like an unclean gas station bathroom. It is just a whole bunch of yellow that we've got at the present moment. With the checkered flag now out in this qualifying session, it's me on a broadcast. I had to say something repulsive at some point. It was bound to happen. So I apologize to anyone tuning into this broadcast here on Slow Motion Broadcasting. And just for that, how about you hit the like button and subscribe?
Yes, definitely subscribe and hit that notify button because you do not want to miss any of the action here on Slow Motion Broadcasting. And Grandma, I'm sorry. I really thought it was going to be Ken in here today. I didn't realize Ron would be joining us, or I would have had you watch next
I'm sorry
week,
you've been cursed with such a fate.
Oh my goodness, and there's some screwy qualifying winding down now, and the rules here are if you cross the start finish line before the time runs out, you get to finish your lap. So qualifying is going to extend beyond that 15-minute timer. That's why you see it running up towards 16 here. Not a lot of cars left on the track right now. We're looking at Grunsky desperately trying to claw his way out of the cellar, currently sitting at 215.7, and we'll see if he can make some magic happen. Looks like he's handling the rain here pretty well, and here is the tough spot, that downhill breaking into Forest Elbow that we saw Bujak struggle with a moment ago, and doink. Okay, and
into the fucking wall.
So that answers that. And if you happen to be at lucky to be at the 12 this last year, I was standing right there at Forest Elbow when a wallaby came on the track. So I have had the complete Mount Pano experience as I watched that oversized rodent hopping across the track while cars were on the track at speed. Fascinating stuff at Bathurst. And if you ever have the chance to attend a race at this Temple of Motorsports, do it. You are within spitting distance of the cars a majority of the track, and it is incredible to see those cars, especially in the dark, come over Skyline and bomb down through the dipper towards Forest Elbow. So highly recommended to visit this place if you can. Scratch that off the bucket list in February, and it still kind of gives me goosebumps, Ron.
And I feel like that sort of wildlife on-track experience beats the time that I was racing at this old disused airfield just outside the city of Philadelphia, and there's a deer walking around the track. Not actually on the track, just around it, which in a car I can imagine is a rather terrifying experience. So you can imagine how my nerves felt in a 70-mile-an-hour shifter cart running around there. Think if that deer walked out, that would not have been a very festive encounter, I can tell you that much. But all that being said, JR, and the rain's still coming down, I wonder what track conditions we're going to have in this race coming up. That rain is still continuing to fall, and looking at the iRacing weather radar, the track is solidly green when it comes to rain. The precipitation chance currently at a solid 100%, and even with winds in the mid-teens, I have a feeling this track is going to be rather damp for this race coming up. We're about to switch over to that race section here in a few moments time, and I'll count it down to 3, 2, 1. Rain's probably not going to be falling down. Let's see if the iRacing gods prove me wrong, and they have proven me wrong. So the track is wet, and we're in for a wild one.
Wow, and looking wetter than it was in qualifying. And I don't have that widget in front of me. What's it saying, Ron?
Well, what we've got right now is the starting grid up for this race, and Stephen Case is your pole sitter. Alex Velasco set to join him on the front row. We have Danush Barborgi in third, Mike Braun in P4 alongside them on the row right behind. We have Daniel Lubvie and Daniel Bujak completing an all Daniel third row. In P7 it's Justin Snyder, and P8 it's Josh Gorin. Adrian Lopez will start in ninth, with Ope Oladipo running out our top 10.
Yeah, and let's see, what do we got next? Josh Leslie will be there in P11 next to Mikovits. Leslie putting down a pretty good time. That is P2 in the Inter 2 grid. Adam Duvall is P3 in Inter 3, 13 overall, next to Jason Kocher. Dylan will be next to Trantham in row 8. Christopher Wang down a little bit in 17 next to Conway. In 18 will be Meyer, landing up next to Van Wagner in row 10. Novice next to Swanbeck. Grinsky next to Embriette Hyde in 23 and 24, and yeah, we'll scroll that. There's more cars. Ken Glasser next to Ganesh in 25 and 26. Cardenas next to Suresh Kumar in 27 and 28. Rudolfo Samudio in 29, and some schlump there, not even taking the grid. J.R. Gregory. That's what I get for putting down practice laps, as I am last. And we are green, and we are soaking wet, and they're wet tires, Ron, all up and down the grid. Velasco is going to jump Case off the start. It's Velasco from Case from our own Mike Braun. Mike Braun also moving up. Looks like Poporgi got a horrible start, dropping like a stone all the way down to P7. And from the exclamation in the studio, something has happened here.
Yeah, they bang and rough each other up coming out of turn number 1. Saw a driver pop a wheelie, which I'll need to tell you that that's not a good strategy in a Formula 4 car. As they head their way down the man straightaway up into turn at number 2. These drivers still risking it and going side by side, having to dance around this racetrack with so much fear and anger. As you can see, that's someone in the barrier. Not sure who that is. That's a 108 right there. That's Mike Braun. A terrible start for him. He scrapes the wall coming out of turn number 2. Loses it on throttle. I am convinced that he did that. He either lost it on throttle just because of cold tires, or he lost it because of a puddle on the outside of the curbs around this track. Usually a bit challenging to hit in these F4 cars, building up the stones to do such a thing, but the puddles that build up around them as well gets even more. Oh, that's Velasco off from the race lead.
Oh my goodness, and things start getting a messy start here. Velasco got a great jump on Case. He saw a little mistake there. Case is going to sniff around here as they come over Skyline, and we're going to drop down through the dipper. Very hazardous portion here for the first time. See how the drivers are going to handle this on a wet track. Really easy to wash out right here. They're making hay here while the sun don't shine, making that right-hander. And let's see what happens at Forest Elbow. That is a very tough spot. Great overhead shot here, by the way. That downhill blast from Skyline down towards Forest Elbow, which is just out of sight at the top of your picture where you see that Falcon sign there. And as they come down the hill, Velasco has hung on despite that little foray into the grass. That's Velasco from Case, from Levivi, from Bujak, all the way up into P4, Adrian Lopez. And Ron, looking up and down my timing screen here, I've got a magic widget here that shows me the tire compounds. We've got Jason Kocher, your season leader in Inter 1, is driving on dries right now, sitting in P16. And also Dan Swanbeck is on dry tires. So it'll be interesting to see how that works out for them. Like I said, we have seen a race here previously where the dry tires were faster than the treaded tires, and there goes a guided missile off into the kitty litter there off of the chase. That is Lloyd Conway forgetting which side the brake pedal was on and shot through there like an unguided missile and didn't take anyone with him, fortunately. But who would have thought that the first lap of a wet race in F4 cars in Bathurst would be eventful? Oh my goodness. And actually Conway, a pretty good avoid there. He got loose, wasn't going to make it, and kind of went through the traffic cones there and didn't wipe out any of his competitors. And I know that they appreciate that. And here we go, a little hydroplaning, little wiggle, and whoop, off into the kitty litter, and a couple of very lucky drivers there, Ron.
That right there was the Code Brown moment. There's no other way to describe that. That was truly terrifying. I think we're going to have to take a look at some more replays of some of the incidents we've had at the start. Here was Mike Braun. He had that moment hang off through turn number 2. Here's his perspective and all that drama heading off through the chase. You can see him dancing his way around that racetrack. You can see the massive puddles by the curb as well. Want to avoid those at all costs. As Jason Kocher, he is on pit exit at the moment, currently slotted down in P28. As a little bit farther up towards the front, we've got a rather interesting field at the north end of the field. It's Stephen Case, your Inter-Alien driver, currently leading the race overall. Daniel Bujak, a Spec 2 driver, currently slotted in P2. And Adrian Lopez, your leader of the Inter 1 competitors, currently running at your podium in third.
Yeah, and Velasco. Oh, wow, there was a big hit there.
Immediate jinx.
We'll go back and try to sort that out for you. That may have been Duvall. He's the one I see plummeting down the standings right now. But yeah, you'll recall that Velasco got the jump on Case off of that start and was looking pretty good, and has plummeted all the way down to P7. And yeah, interesting mix up top. As Ron pointed out, we're going to take a quick look at a replay here, and cover your eyes if you get queasy seeing F4 parts flying over the fence, because you're going to see it right here. Bang. And oh my goodness, there goes that rear wing, and there it's back. And I do love the no damage model. And Ron, yeah, they're really compromising their line right here, trying to thread the needle between those puddles entering the chase way off the racing line. And a little, oh my goodness, there's a contested entry. Leslie versus Paborshi, and that ends poorly for both of them. And this one, just as messy as you might have expected.
As soon as they went side by side into the chase, I just knew that that was going to end one way, and that was cataclysmically wrong. Two very good racers, do not get me wrong. They are some of the best that this series has to offer, but there's only so much you can do with some side-by-side racing heading down into the chase in pouring rain in conditions like this, doubly so considering the track temperatures are at 62 degrees Fahrenheit. You're not going to get too much out of a situation like that. I can assure you as much. There's been a lot of drama here, and there may have been a moment involving Kukaran Dillon in the number 24 car. I think he had a front row seat to, I'm not sure who that was, with a wild off-track moment heading down the hill. It may have been Greg Meyer. Let's take a look at it here in the 8 car. See a driver spinning off in the back of shot. I feel bad for our producer, who's probably had about 18,000 different replay calls from our production software. Here's Meyer and loses it. That change of elevation heading through there, even in the dry, the amount of times that I've hit that barrier that he backed himself into would really beggar belief. As we take a look at this moment involving Embriette Hyde in the number 93 car, heading her way off through the top end of the circuit. That's through McPhillamy Park, and parks it against the barrier.
Yeah, a little over rotation there, and that's a place where you normally might want to smooch that curb a little bit to widen that corner, but a painted curb is slicker than ice, scientifically proven. And you saw Embriette Hyde taking a little 360 there for her trouble going wide on that exit. And my goodness, Case has driven away. Ron, look at that interval back to Bujak now, 6.3 seconds. And we've seen Case have a few track days in this series, and Case keeping it cool, calm, and collected and smooth. That line through Forrest's elbow there looked completely normal line, like he wasn't fighting that car at all. Oh my goodness. And you see some of the other drivers avoiding that polished inside of Forrest's elbow, but Case just drove right through it. Didn't seem to bother him a bit. We'll ride along with Oladipo here sitting in P6. That is P4 in Inner Alien as he follows Velasco down the chase. And look at that fine visibility that he's enjoying. You see that draft going to work, that gap dropping. It's under 1/10 of a second. And are we going to be side by side heading into the chase here? A little wiggle there as the car hydroplanes, and bang! Who could have seen that coming? As more car parts over the wall and a garage sale on the outfield at the chase, and car back together and back on the road. But we'll ride along with Oladipo there, and or Oladipo, excuse me. And yeah, Ron, we have not seen success driving off of that very narrow gap between the puddles on the entry to the chase, and we should make a public service announcement to not go side by side there.
I would also like to apologize to anyone who headphones just got blown up by me screaming into my microphones. We saw Oladipo lose it at terminal velocity, heading down into the chase. Very lucky that the series does not enable damage. Otherwise, as you can briefly see whenever these accidents take place, iRacing will simulate as if that car got wrecked and then pop everything back on as if no harm or foul was done. That's Christopher Wang, very slow heading through the chase. You can see the amount of gravel spread through that track as well. The amount of drivers who have either overshot their braking marker heading down into turn number 21, the first part of the chase, or they just have a moment like we saw a couple of moments ago for Ope Oladipo, and they just have a massive collision heading off into there. That section is hard enough as is. You're testing what you can do heading through one of the fastest corners in Australian motorsports, and having to slam on the brakes, drop the anchors, and run them through asphalt to be able to get slowed up in time for the turn. Super tough corner to try and manage, but I gotta say, as all that drama has been going on at the chase here, JR, there's been a chase down going on at the front. Stephen Case at one point in time had about a 6-second gap between himself and Daniel Bujak. Last time by, though, for Stephen Case. Oh, that's a moment for Bujak. Worst time for me to mention him.
Yeah, Ron dishing out the commentator's curses hand over fist, and a kind of a dubious re-entry there as well, as Bujak tries to get that car turned around. And again, fortunately, no damage, so I guess you can just do an 18-point turn, breaking the nose and the tail off back and forth until you get moving again. But Bujak's excellent drive, kind of wheels falling off of it figuratively and literally right there. And yeah, Case must have had some kind of error. That 6-second gap had dropped to 1 second, and now it's starting to build up again. And now it's Case from Lopez from Pavorji, your top three, followed by Bujak and Lebivi. And Case seems to be the only one who's able to find some consistency there. But as I said, it looks like he probably had some kind of error. We're going to take a look at Case right now, and coming up over the hill. See what happens here, and whoop, just a touch on the blade of grass right there, and that's all it took to make that car snap. And these F4 cars will snap. It's a mid-engine car, low polar moment if you want to be a physics nerd and look that up, but it is amplified, to be sure, by these conditions. And something else amplified, Josh, I don't know if you can give me the positions lost and gained, but looking through the top 10, frequently these races tend to come down to who's able to keep it clean and who's able to avoid problems. And that has also been amplified in these conditions. Look at some of these hard chargers. Lloyd Conway from your Inter 2 division up 10 spots into the top 10 in P8. Behind him, Ganesh has moved up 16 from his qualifying, damn near DFLing it there, and fighting his way up into the top 10. So this track chewing up some people and spitting them out, but the people who are able to handle the rain, keep it clean, and avoid incidents are really benefiting.
Yeah, if you can avoid that falling anvil in conditions like this, you are going to be smelling like a bed of roses at the end of this race. And we're already seeing that kind of put on full display. The drama really kicked off at the very beginning of the race. You can see a lot of drivers stacking their way up all through Hell Corner. It was hell for a lot of these drivers, as you can see multiple cars going off. That's one lockup. I think in the rejoin there may have been a bit of a checkup. Yeah, you can see popping up into the air. That, I believe, may have been Greg Meyer in the number 8 car who had that wheelie right at the beginning of this race coming out of turn number 1. But the drama didn't stop there. We saw that moment with our esteemed colleague here at Slow Motion Broadcasting, Mr. Mike Braun, not having the best of moments coming out of turn number 2. Very easy to lose it in conditions like this, mind you. And he had a shallow line trying to goose up the throttle coming out of it, and unfortunately in the process of that going to smack the pedigree wall.
Yeah, for sure. And like I said, it's a challenge to get heat in these tires in the best of conditions, and this does not qualify. Or riding back with Bujak now. A little smooch on Forrest's elbow there, right on cue. That is a live shot of Bujak, I believe, following Lebivi down Conrad Straight here. And again, we'll see that draft go to work. And Mr. Bujak, based on our past experience, may be wise not to try to go side by side into the chase here, but we'll see what he decides to do. Lebivi ahead of him will cover the inside, maybe out of not really a choice, just avoiding the big puddles. Oh, and Bujak tiptoes a little bit in one of the puddles, and you see that result as soon as you get in that deep water. Even with the treaded tires, these F4 cars will just wash out and understeer straight off the track.
You know, I'm going to share an experience from my own karting days. There was one time that we ran in very, very challenging conditions, similar to this, heavily rain-soaked, as Ope Oladipo trying to get some moves done around the outside. That's himself, and I believe that's Bujak on the inside of him very briefly, as now it's Lebivi and Bujak battling tooth and nail down into turn number 1, losing out on that run very briefly, as Adrian Lopez may try and get involved in this battle as well in the 007 car. At the front of the field, though, Danush Barborgi has been able to jump into the race lead in front of Stephen Case. Something is going on at the front of the field. I think Stephen Case may have crashed, because that gap has ballooned out over the past couple of moments. The driver of the 243 car has had some sort of major drama Josh Leslie is also out of this race. Mike Braun, Aaron Van Wagner, Justin Snyder keeps blinking in and out of existence. So the UFO is clearly trying to have a word with the driver of the 347 car. Not sure what sort of encounters of a third kind he may have had there, but nonetheless, looking at these drivers scraping their way up through the top end of the racetrack, it is like this may be a terrible comparison. I feel like I'm being electrocuted looking at these drivers. I'm so nervous and tense.
Yeah, tough conditions here. And we're going to try to find a replay of what happened to Stephen Case. But my goodness. Okay, here we go. Here is the replay. And seeing Case coming. Looks like we're heading up the hill into Griffin's here. And is he getting pressure from behind by Poborji right there? That may be. And Poborji applying the pressure. Case overcooking that entry. And as you can see, no hesitation. Get these things turned around between the walls. Just floor it and let the parts fly off because they're going to fly back on. But what I was going to say, Ron, Poborji has experienced all the highs and lows. And there's another spinner there. Oh, my goodness. That looks like Dylan maybe taking a ride in... or no, that was Lopez taking a ride in Forest Elbow. But Poborji, your pole sitter, smoked off the start. Or no, not pole sitter. I think he was P3, but got smoked off the start, hit out of Hell's Corner, and really had some big struggles early on with contact with other cars and mistakes. And here's his view of Case's little pirouette there in Griffin's Bend as Poborji takes the lead. But Poborji has persevered and now enjoys a 14-second interval back to P2 with only 3.5 minutes left.
And for Poborji, he just needs to not put a foot wrong, and he'll be golden at the end of this race. And think of it this way as well, JR, talking about Danush Poborji, one of the top drivers in this series, one of the top drivers in the top class in this series as well. He's been quick up to this point, has grabbed a couple of wins up to this point, to be a bit more precise. He's already won twice at Winton and Phillip Island. So seeming that the Australian tracks are a bit of a happy hunting ground for him. Wasn't able to... my apologies, worst time to get a hiccup, but wasn't able to get the deal sealed last time out at Oran Park, the last time we went to an Australian track. But here for the last one, looks like Poborji is going to get his third win on an Aussie track, and in very challenging conditions as well. In a series like this, though, winning by 14 seconds, granted with some extenuating circumstances, that is still a very good feat, and that may increase as Case and Bujak may start to battle, as we're seeing the likes of Lopez and Labivi battle right now. Yeah,
Labivi sticking around the outside of Griffin's there. Great move as overcoming, or no, that was Lopez making the move, overcoming the inside defense there. And wow, and tip of the hat to Daniel Bujak, Ron, P3 overall. That is an Inter 2 driver, and he is showing us the art of racing in the rain. He is still all over Stephen Case. There he is right there, following Case over Skyline. And Case has already allowed himself to be pressured into a couple of errors here. Bujak is in position to maybe make that happen again. And you see Bujak taking a little tighter, cleaner line, and there he goes. Well, he's going to lose one position there. Damage off, does a pirouette, and keeps going. And the commentator's curse is falling like raindrops around here at Bathurst as time ticks down. Only a minute and 50 remaining. And we're going to row. Nice catch by Oladipo there. You got to have fast hands to get that opposite lock going on a dry day in these F4 cars, and multiplied by a million here in the rain. And Oladipo showing you the reflexes there as he avoids the spun out Bujak.
Some quick reflexes that these drivers have to keep their cars on the racetrack. We'll note as well, JR, as much as the track is obviously still soaked, and with Danush Poborji starting the final lap, I don't think this track is going to be magically bone dry when he comes around to take the checker here in about 2.5 minutes time. The rain has stopped, so it's not getting any worse. It's not really getting any better either. The track conditions are still pretty rough. iRacing marking the track as moderately wet. It's also quite cool out there as well. I mean, as someone who's had to deal with the fact that here in the city of Philadelphia, it's been 55 degrees and rainy pretty much the entirety of today. 62 degrees Fahrenheit is rather tough for these drivers, as that's Adrian Lopez having a moment down into the final corner, and you can see he's lost out on a boatload of time, now going to fall to 6th, and he may feel a little bit of pressure if he has another mistake from Athul Ganesh in the 666 car right behind. Actually, let's load up this replay to see that 007 car having a bonding moment with the tire barrier.
Ooh, that hurts. And the Murray's corner there, and as a side note, that is Ron's favorite corner here at Mount Pano. And Lopez, despite the incident, still hanging on to P1 in his class, inner one. So he has got a death grip on that. The white flag has got to be out at this point. And looking at who we got right now, that is Lebivi with getting pressured by Velasco. Velasco still hanging around there. And as they go by a spinner there in Griffin's Bend, and man, it looks like the cream is rising to the top run. The Inter Aliens have taken over the podium. We had a good mix early on, but the steadiness and experience of the faster class winning out here, as we got Poborji from Case from Oladipo, 1, 2, and 3 overall and in class. It is Bujak from Conway, another P2 driver in the top 5, and Trantham 4, 5, and 9. That's your podium right now in Inter 2 as this one wind down. Then Lopez, Ganesh, and Lebivi is your provincial podium as this one ticks down. And I'm pretty sure the white flag is out here. So we're seeing some last opportunities to get around the track clean. The sun's coming out. The drivers are cursing. Couldn't you have showed up a little bit earlier? And the sun says, no, son, get out there and drive. And here comes Poborji now. He is going to navigate Ron's favorite Murray's corner here for the last time, avoiding that huge puddle on the inside. Stay off the paint on the outside, and Poborji with ease, an 18-second interval. Usually don't see these kind of intervals here in these F4 races, but extenuating circumstances. And Poborji, get me out of here, drives 10 feet past the finish line and escapes. He doesn't want even to drive to the next corner after all this stress. Oh my goodness, and a huge biff. That is Stephen K. And he is not going to finish. He did not make it to the line, and Repair is not going to put that car back on its wheels. And Stephen Case is going to DFL this one, folks, after flipping that car on the last corner. And that has championship implications. Unbelievable.
I think he may have actually crossed the line. I think iRacing judged it as him crossing the line there. At least it has a checkered flag next to his name. So I think the start line you can see there with the Bathurst branding on the track, that's considered the start line, but the finish line is about, I'd say, probably 350 feet farther down. It's not terribly far out of, as you said, JR, my absolutely favorite corner, turn number 23 around this track. I think it was a broadcast that we were doing together with Josh working the cam, so this has lived in infamy with all three of us, me going on like a 3.5 minute long tirade talking about every single thing I dislike about turn number 23 pixel by pixel in the sim. But I think he may have actually crossed the line there upside down, which it doesn't take a rocket scientist to know that that's not the ideal strategy, but he still ends up on the podium. Granted, if it was real life, he'd be killed, but he still finished on the podium here in sim.
Wow, that is interesting. I may need to see that again. There may be separate start and finish. And we will get back to that, folks. But it sure didn't look like he made it to Barney the Flagman there. But iRacing is crediting him with a finish and a P3. So as the cars continue to circulate around, and look at the bottom of that grid, I feel for these guys on some level. But 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11 cars parked it, have just had enough. I don't care if damage is off. I don't want to do this anymore. And we lost the bottom third of the grid here in very, very challenging conditions at Bathurst. And, these drivers knew what was coming. They showed up and gave it their best effort. But some of them just decided that it wasn't fun and that they didn't want to do it anymore. But we'll have those final results up for you here in just a second. We're riding along with Samudio now. He may be the last driver to cross the line, and Samudio there demonstrating the proper car configuration of tire down. But here comes Case versus Oladipo here, and this is for position. Oladipo had been running in P3, manages to squeak by Case here on Conrad Straight. Still a little bit of overlap there, and he says no, slams the door in Case's face through the chase, and we'll see what happens with Case riding along with him now, looking forward, and he may have had an inkling to try something here and get that P2 back. So we'll see what he does down here in Murray's Bend. And of course, Oladipo there covering the inside, as you would expect. Case not really trying to move there. Back on the power and touches that painted curb. Oh, and there's the finish line. You're right. The finish line is separate from the starting line, and he careened upside down, spitting off body parts over the line to round out the podium. Wow. And that was fortunate. He managed to skid a couple of car lengths past it and came to a dead stop. And as I said, that would be a tow. The auto repair will not put your car back on its wheels. Oh, man. Ron, who would have thought that a rainy race in F4 cars at Bathurst would have this many incidents? I'm shocked.
And you mentioned a point talking about some drivers just deciding to call it a day. Some of them certainly did that, but a few of them did get whacked with some disqualifications, including our esteemed slow motion broadcasting colleague Mike Braun, who I believe got whacked with a DSQ. Looking through, only 3 drivers were marked with one according to the sim, but again, this is iRacing Info. Actually, nope. I'm going to refrain. Last time I talked about iRacing information when it comes to the weather being inaccurate, my sim decided not to work for about 3 weeks straight. So I'm going to refrain from any further comment and say that it was rather challenging conditions for these drivers. So some disqualifications also being thrown into the fold as well.
Yeah, for sure. And I don't recall the limit. I want to say it's maybe 15, which
20.
It's a pretty short race, obviously, but like I said, there's a lot of banging. You're seeing a bunch of X's pile up right there. A lot of them that we weren't even able to cover. But as those cars are pinballing. As his cars are pinballing down the hill there off of Skyline, they're racking up 4X after 4X, and yeah, of course, we got some incident DQs, but oh man, that was exhausting, and I wasn't even driving. But if you hang on with us here just for a second, we're going to have those results for you. And here we go. And it is Case from Velasco from Poborgi, 1, 2, 3, all pros. Mike Braun showing up in P4. So that's the qualifying results. I'm going to take a breath here, and we'll get the race results up for you. There we go. Okay, let's go through those race results with you. Tadej Poborgi, Oladipo, and Case 1, 2, and 3, and also 1, 2, and 3 in the top class. Daniel Bujak and Lloyd Conway 4 and 5. That is 1 and 2 in Inter 2. So Bujak and Conway both finishing with the entire Inter 1 field and a couple aliens behind them. Tip of the hat to both of them for making that work. And then 6, 7, and 8, it is Lopez, Ganesh, and Labivi, and that is your Inter 1 podium. Then we'll have Jason Trantham P3 in Inter 2, then Alex Velasco in P10. Then it's Corwin, Duvall, Grinsky, Kocher, Navas, Hyde, Samudio, and Dylan, and that will get us up to P18. Dylan showing a lap down here on timing, and pretty soon we're going to be giving the results from people in the pits. But see, where were we? Completely lost my place. Okay, so now we're on Cardenas and Shreshmakar round out the top 20. Then it's Snyder from Wang, Leslie, Mike Braun, SMB's own Mike Braun in P24, Aaron Van Wagner in 25, Mikovits in 26, Glasser and Meyer in 27 and 28. And one more scroll here. I think we may have one more car. Oh, no, we don't. There is one more. Dan Swanback a few laps down in P29, and my name there, of course, from participating in practice. So holy cow. I'm going to take a breath, Ron, and take a look out in the green room, see if there's anybody waiting to chat with us. Yeah, it looks like we have our P1 driver, Danush Paborji, overall winner. Hey, man, how you feeling? Are you still shaking from the adrenaline, or have you managed to calm down?
I had one of the dogs check my oxygen level because I was not breathing the entire time.
Well, you had about every experience that you could have there. I think you qualify. I want to say you qualified in P3. Kind of got swamped off the start, and then got some contact out of turn one. So you got off on the wrong foot, but you kept your head down and managed to get your way up to Case, put some pressure on him. And I'm not going to say you caused him to spin, but he had to be thinking about you when that spin happened in Griffin, putting you into P1. So, my gosh, how would you describe the experience of driving an F4 car in these kind of conditions at Bathurst?
I mean, Bathurst in the best of conditions is insane. You got to be committed. You got to be just brave. But then when it rains, it's completely opposite, So just kind of hold on, see what happens, and keep your nose clean as best as possible.
And so what I was trying to keep my eye on where you were. I think you might have fallen as far as 8 or 10 or something like that. Did you have any idea?
Something like that. I think it was 10 or 9 or something like that. And then I knew I would just number one, the toe helps quite a bit around here, and then just not freak out and let people make the mistakes and let the positions come to you here.
Yeah, well, you certainly did that. What a recovery drive, and just by keeping it clean and avoiding the flaming barrels that were bouncing between the walls coming over Skyline Drive, and we saw that over and over again. When you caught up to Case, what did you think your chances were? Case, pretty fast driver, but looks like you had some skills in the rain that he wasn't able to summon today.
Well, obviously Case is always very formidable, but when I was catching him before the spin, and then I was maybe I have a good chance. And then he mentioned in his chat that he thought he overcooked his wets, which it got pretty dry at the end. So a decent chance, but I thought again, it's Case. You can never assume. So you just got to be careful and pick your battles.
Well, all right. And I got to ask you, we haven't mentioned this yet, folks, but a lot of these competitors here are actually at the Sim Racers Group brick and mortar facility in East San Jose. So are you driving from home, or are you down at the race club with your buddies?
I'm in good old T-Town, Tulsa, Oklahoma.
Tulsa, Oklahoma. All right. Well,
yep.
A fantastic drive from Tulsa. I'm imagining that the weather is not like this there.
Actually, it was 2 days ago. It was
really
almost
okay.
Tornado, yeah. Tornado Alley. So
you got a little bit of a warm up then for the weather,
yeah.
But we're got a slow mo of you running right now, coming through the dipper, and man, oh man, I enjoyed driving this thing in the dry here in practice. Didn't get to do it in the wet, and I think I prefer it that way. I'm okay stepping out before the rain started because that looked like an incredible handful. But a fantastic drive, Danush. And as we wrap up, is there anyone you'd like to thank or give a shout out to today?
Obviously, Jason, SRG, for putting this on, and you guys, great. Everybody does a great job. Let me see. Francine, fiance, of course, and OSU. Go Pokes.
All right, fantastic. Well, again, congratulations on a fantastic recovery after a tough start. And pro tip, folks, it ain't over till it's over. So keep your head down, keep driving, and you can end up in P1 as Danush did today. So thanks so much, and we'll see you next week at Okayama.
Appreciate it, guys. Thank you.
All right, and we do have one more person waiting to speak to us, the master of precipitation, Dan the Man Bujak, comes in P4 with the entire inner one field behind him, and was sniffing at a podium there until a minor a spin made you fall back off the back of Case. Dan, how was that race from where you were sitting, and how were you able to kind of drive out of your class here today?
Yeah, it was quite intense, and I think it was a couple of spins that put me back. But yeah, I think I did a little bit of practice this week, so I knew it was my first time doing like a proper wet race. I really wanted to, get the technique down. But I think that definitely helped. Obviously, qualifying being dry-ish helped too. Was able to get decent qualifying, and then I was honestly just trying not to crash the whole time.
Yeah, well, really a fantastic drive, and for people who are looking at Bathurst in wet conditions, have you got any tips for us? Is there a wet line? Are there places that are particularly tough? Anything that you can share from your practice at Bathurst?
I would say the biggest thing that helped me was getting off the racing line in the big braking zones. So down the three big straights, kind of. Braking on the line there was horrible. Once I figured that out, that definitely helped.
Yeah, and they talk about the wet line and dry line, and of course the dry line has polished concrete that gets super slick. So Dan figured that out, and my goodness, so close to a podium, and really a fantastic drive. So congratulations. That was quite a feat to even keep the car on the track for 20 minutes, much less almost get a podium and a P1 in class. So really great drive. And as we wrap up, is there anyone you'd like to thank or give a shout out to today?
I'd say Jason, of course, for putting this all on, and probably my wife for watching our 1-year-old every Wednesday night so I can do this.
Nice. Yeah, we got to thank our family to support all of our habits, good and bad. And this is a pretty tidy one as habits go. So, all right. Well, fantastic. Congratulations again. Thanks for stopping by and chatting with us. And we will see you next week in Japan, Okayama Raceway.
Thanks a lot. See ya.
All right, and that is everybody we have. And speaking of Okayama-ron, out in the wild, I think it's not a super popular track. I think a lot of people that get into iRacing have to drive it a lot, for example, in Miatas, and may be a little tired of it. But how do you think these F4 cars are going to do out there?
Well, Okayama is a track that can put on some pretty good racing when it comes to those F4s. It's got the tight twisties where you can have some side-by-side battling, but it's also got some flat-out sections, mainly that back straightaway, that keeps that field oh so close together. I remember about a year ago at this point, a little bit over that, I was doing an F4 broadcast of a race at Okayama, and that was a barn burner of a race. So I have a feeling that in 1 week's time, when the Sim Racers group returns for their second to last round of this 2025 Season 2, I have a feeling they're going to be putting on a killer race.
All right. Well, you heard it, folks. Instant classic on the horizon. So make sure that you subscribe to SMB and hit that notification icon so that you don't miss any of the action. And speaking of action, we have got some upcoming races here on SMB starting tomorrow night. Extreme Scoring Indy Cars will tackle Long Beach. So if you like open wheel cars brushing up against concrete, you're going to want to tune in for that one. Saturday, Weekend Warriors will be at Sonoma Raceway in the Bay Area of California. And on Sunday, a double header of Weekend Warrior action. Formula Fords will be at Olton Park. That one is going to be awesome, I promise. And SRFs will be at the Phoenix road course. So again, subscribe and notify. And just wanted to mention, we have some special events coming up this summer on July 3rd, a USRA 160 lap ARCA event with cash prizes, and on the 26th, a 3-hour sports car enduro. Still getting the classes sorted out, but if you're a GT3 driver, there will be room for you there for sure. So that is going to wrap us up for tonight, folks. I am JR Gregory. On behalf of myself, my partner Racing Ron Mons, and our phenomenal producer Joshua Wilkie, and everyone else here at SMB, thanks so much for joining us. And you'll definitely want to check out next week's action at Okayama. Enjoy the rest of your day wherever you are, and hang on, baby, the weekend's coming.